The sun had not yet risen above the jagged line of the eastern cliffs when the first stirrings began in the camp. The air was cold, thin, and alive with a quiet pulse of unseen things. Insects, breath, the crackle of cooling embers that fought through the night. From the mouth of a stone shelter, a man stepped out, his breath a pale cloud in the dawn. His name was Kor, though no one said names here. Names were sounds for calling, not for memory. His bare feet pressed into the wet earth, leaving dark prints beside the ashes of the fire. Around him, others began to move, the slow uncoiling of a tribe waking not to dreams, but to the weight of survival. The smell of smoke lingered on their skin, a reminder of warmth and a hunger. Every morning began with the same question, unspoken but heavy in every chest. What will we eat today? The women gathered around the faint glow of dying coals, hands working with dry grass and bark to coax the first spark. Children huddled close, their eyes wide with sleep and cold. Far off, the men stretched their limbs, feeling the ache of another hunt waiting in their bones. The valley below lay hidden under mist, silent except for the distant groan of the river. It was in this silence that the day began. A day that would end,
so
as all days did, around fire and flesh, smoke and story.
Eat well
the rhythm of life had no
moons,
change, only repetition.
Thanks to the
Yet in that
spirits
sameness,
of the valley.
there was everything. The first light of the sun brushed the tips of cliffs, catching the dust and mist in its weak glow. Kor moved with deliberate silence, a shadow among shadows, carrying nothing but a sharpened stone and a carved wooden spear. The others followed, each step measured, each breath contained. The valley below was alive with sound. Birds calling, leaves trembling in the breeze, distant hooves striking soft earth. The hunt was not a game. It was a negotiation with death, their own and the life they sought to take. They crouched behind boulders, waiting, eyes tracing the movement of shapes that flickered among the trees. A deer, sleek and cautious, lifted its head, nostrils flaring. Time seemed to bend. Every second stretched into eternity. Kor raised a spear, muscles coiled like springs, heart drumming in a rhythm older than memory. And then, with a single practiced motion, he threw, the spear flying true, embedding itself in the soft side of the animal. The others moved quickly, silent as shadows, to finish what was necessary. The kill was respect, not sport. It was the life of another given so that their own could continue. They whispered thanks into the cold wind, their voices swallowed immediately by the valley, and began the slow process of preparing the meat, cleaning and securing what would sustain them, while the men dealt with a larger game. The women moved among the underbrush with quiet expertise. They sought roots, tubers, and small edible plants hidden beneath the damp soil. Hands, gnarled from decades of work, probed the earth, pulling out knobby treasures that smelled faintly of moss and rain. Some were bitter, some sweet. All required care to prepare. They would peel, crush, and roast these in ashes later. A subtle alchemy that transformed earth into sustenance. Children watched, learning the shapes of leaves, the smell of soil, the weight of patience. There was a rhythm here, too. Touch, taste, evaluate. Every root and berry carried knowledge, which should be eaten raw, which demanded fire, which would poison if ignored. The tribe's survival depended not just on skill with weapons, but on understanding the land in a way no map or word could convey. Hands stained with clay and plant juice moved like dancers, gathering, testing, respecting the silent generosity of the soil. By mid-morning, baskets were full, and the first bundles of roots were carried back toward the camp. Returning to the shelter, the smell of smoke greeted them like an old companion. The fire, rekindled from embers saved overnight, was the center of all life. Kor struck flint against stone, sparks catching dry grass until flames licked the air hungrily. Women and children helped feed the fire, tossing in sticks and bark. The blaze transformed the camp instantly, painting faces and flickering gold and shadow. Meat from the hunt was hung near the flames, roots wrapped in leaves, some even buried beneath hot coals to steam. Fire was not just warmth. It was a shield against the cold, a purifier, a signal, a shrine. The tribe circled it instinctively, voices soft, movements careful, each aware that life without fire was life raw and fragile. Smoke drifted skyward, blending with morning mist, and for a moment the valley seemed suspended, a place outside time where survival, ritual, and quiet joy intertwined. The carcass of the deer lay spread on a flat stone, cleaned with tools honed from bone and flint. Kor worked silently, cutting away sinew and gristle, the rhythm of his movements both deliberate and meditative. Others helped, scraping, slicing, preserving each piece with careful attention. Some meat was set aside to dry in the sun. Others cooked immediately. Salt did not exist, but fire, smoke, and time offered preservation. The women applied fat and crushed herbs from gathered plants, layering flavor and care onto each strip. Cooking was not just necessity. It was ritual, a dialogue with the animal whose life had been given. The children watched, learning the geometry of muscles, the scent of roasting fat, the glow of coals through trembling leaves. And as the first pieces hissed and darkened, the smell of cooking filled the air, a silent announcement that the day's work had begun in earnest. While the main feast began, others went to the river, crafting makeshift traps and nets from reeds and sinew. Fingers splintered and bled slightly, but no one complained. Fish and small game were abundant if you knew patience. Traps were checked, nets lifted with trembling arms. The catch was modest, but precious. A small fire was made near the water's edge. Fish roasted over reeds, embers coaxed by breath and bark. The smell of cooked fish mingled with river mist, a subtle perfume that marked the edge between survival and ritual. Even the smallest catch was honored. Nothing was wasted. Bones and scales were returned to the earth, a cycle understood in instinct and experience. The sun climbed higher, and the camp pulsed with life. Fire, smoke, running water, voices low with focus and care. By midday, the heat pressed on the valley, and the tribe paused. Meat hung from branches, roots steamed in ashes. Children played quietly with sticks and stones. Sweat stung eyes, but there was a satisfaction in the rhythm of labor done well. Kor sat on a boulder, blade in hand, carving small symbols, marks to track hunts, seasons, or perhaps memories. These marks, though meaningless to outsiders, carried significance known only to them, a record of survival, of work, of life sustained. Eyes closed, he inhaled the scent of smoke and earth, listening to the quiet symphony of the valley, wind, bird, water, and fire. There was no hurry. Urgency existed only in hunger, and for now, hunger had been tempered. Even in a world defined by need, moments like these offered something beyond necessity. Clarity, patience, a faint taste of eternity. As the sun tilted westward, the camp returned to action. Meat was shifted over coals, roots stirred carefully in leaves, small fish turned on hot stones. Smoke curled in slow spirals, carrying the aroma of survival into the sky. Kor checked each piece, feeling texture with fingers, listening to the subtle hiss and pop of heat-meeting flesh. The women moved in tandem, passing tools, adjusting leaves, feeding embers. Cooking was music, rhythm and motion, a dance of survival. Eyes met across the fire, silent acknowledgments of shared work, shared life. Each action was measured, deliberate, tied to instinct refined over centuries. Every meal carried memory and instruction, binding the living to the land, the tribe to the day, and the present to the eternal cycle of taking, giving, and sustaining. Children circled the fire, wide-eyed and curious, absorbing every motion. Hands mimicked scraping meat, arranging leaves, stirring coals. Lessons were silent but total. Knowledge passed not in words, but in gesture, in repetition. The smallest tasks, like gathering ash or feeding tiny flames, were no less sacred than hunting the largest game. Kor watched them with a mixture of pride and quiet caution. The day would come when they, too, would step into the rhythm of survival, carrying the skill, patience, and reverence of generations. The valley itself seemed to witness this. A light wind passing over the fire, birds settling on distant branches, the river murmuring secrets of the earth. In the shadow of cliffs, life persisted, fragile, fierce, and beautiful. As the sun dipped low, some of the men moved toward the forest's edge for a final hunt. Smaller animals, rabbits, and birds could be taken with stealth and precision, filling gaps in the evening meal. Spears were sharpened, traps checked, arrows prepared. The hunt was quiet, deliberate. Branches snapped softly underfoot, and the scent of smoke lingered behind them, a signal that home was near. They returned with their catch, careful not to disturb the balance of the forest. Each kill added to the fire's offerings, extending life for one more night. The air was cool, the shadows long, and the rhythm of work had begun to slow, bending toward the inevitable pause of darkness. Back at camp, the tribe gathered. The fire blazed high, a golden circle against darkening cliffs. Meat roasted, roots steamed, fish glowed on stones. Hands, once busy, now rested, though some fingers still brushed coals or adjusted leaves. The smell of cooked food was intoxicating, mingling with the cool night air. Silence was shared, comfortable, each member lost in thought or memory. The fire's warmth was not just physical. It held the weight of another day survived, another ritual honored. Even in the absence of words, there was conversation, through gaze, gesture, and presence. Meals were portions of life, sustenance, and art, prepared carefully, appreciated fully, and shared equally. Cor lifted a piece of roasted meat, handed another to a child. Women passed bowls of roots, steaming in leafy wrappings. The tribe ate with attention, lips and hands moving in unison with the quiet music of hunger and gratitude. Each bite carried the memory of the hunt, the river, the soil. There was no haste. Every taste mattered, every morsel honored. Food was sacred, a bridge between life taken and life sustained. Children learned the gravity of this ritual, understanding that survival was not merely about filling the stomach, but about participating in a larger cycle, giving respect to the earth, the animals, the fire, and one another. Once hunger was sated, attention turned to preservation. Meat was smoked, roots stored in baskets lined with leaves, fish buried in cool earth. Each action was precise, measured, guided by the instinct honed over generations. Cor and the others worked side by side, the fire's glow painting their faces in gold and shadow. Knowledge of the day's work was transferred to hands and mind, ensuring tomorrow would be easier, survival more certain. Even in mundane acts, wrapping, storing, arranging, there was care, love, and reverence. Every preserved meal was a promise that life would continue, that hunger would be met again, that the rhythm of survival endured. Darkness fell over the cliffs. The valley hushed under a blanket of stars. Fires glowed softly, casting long shadows, painting faces in flickering patterns. The tribe sat or lay near coals, resting after a day of labor and life. The air carried the scent of smoke, cooked meat, and wet earth. Cor gazed at the night sky, recognizing constellations not by name, but by memory and instinct. The children drifted into sleep, the women murmured softly, and even the men's eyes softened after the hunt. The day had been ordinary in its tasks, yet extraordinary in its continuity. Life preserved, knowledge shared, the rhythm maintained. Silence was not empty. It was full of presence, of awareness, of gratitude. As the last coals dimmed and the valley sank into deep night, Cor curled near the fire's remnants. The tribe slept in clusters, bodies warm, hearts steady, minds alert even in rest. Tomorrow would bring the same questions, the same labor, the same need to hunt, gather, cook, and preserve. Yet tonight there was peace. Every life taken and given had been honored, every root dug, every flame coaxed, every meal shared had strengthened the bond between earth, tribe, and survival. And so in darkness and quiet, the world waited, patient, eternal, and unchanging, ready for the first breath of dawn, when smoke would rise again and the simple, sacred cycle of life and food would begin once more.